Well, I've been here since 6th grade. One of my brothers graduated in 2013 and the other in 2011, so I've been a part of the Overlake community about just as long as I can remember. I fondly remember attending Overlake musicals and lacrosse games in elementary school. I remember my first day of 6th grade in Mike Davidson's homeroom, putting on my Overlake jersey for the first time, and waiting at the bottom of the hill in the old junior lot with my brother Elliot for a car to stop and give us a ride up. It was in these car rides up from the junior lot that I learned to truly appreciate the Overlake community. No matter how wet we were, drenched in rain and with muddy shoes, there was always a steady stream of cars stopping to give rides. Of course, I have to let Elliot go in one car and then I go in the other, because that's just the way things work for us. But this is a giving place. This is a place where every day we learn and grow, but most importantly, we help each other and we learn and grow from each other. This spirit of support is what I find so unique to the Overlake community. For the relationships I've had the opportunity to establish here are ones I can depend on, and I know that are going to last me a lifetime, whether it's teachers, friends, or coaches. I have a water polo game in Gig Harbor on a Monday night, and I have like 5 tests the next day. I'm super stressed, and my homeroom teacher figures out extensions with me and takes on a load of that stress for me. And the next day, she asked me how my game was, or even texted me that night and asked me how it was. I'm a freshman, and I'm super stressed about my Algebra 2 test, my final. And Rhonda comes in on a Saturday afternoon and sits down with me and helps me figure out how to multiply matrices, which took me like 5 hours to learn. I don't even know why. I made the senior sign up at the art barn to paint with a few of my friends. And I call Lance DeLay, the head of maintenance, and he gets it there within an hour. Doors are held, people smile on pathways. That's just the Overlake way. We are also encouraged here to embrace the diversity of passions. My friends who play basketball are also leaders of like 5 different clubs, code in their free time, and just do a myriad of things. For me, Overlake has meant having the opportunity to pursue my wide range of passions, and most importantly, figure out what those passions are. Sophomore year, just like Kate Berry, I had the opportunity to go on an eye-opening trip to the Overlake School in Thailand, Cambodia for 2 weeks during Project Week. The culture of service through service learning, service days, and project weeks like this have shaped the way I view the importance of contribution. Overlake's emphasis on the outdoors through the outdoor program and through service days, once again, has led me to become passionate about environmental science and about agriculture and the issues that the United States is faced with today. This inspired my decision to take a semester of my junior year at the mountain school in Vermont, a school where I learned to farm, to learn to take care of place and people. Overlake made this experience possible for me. Teachers would stay after school to help me catch up on any curriculum that I missed, and all my friends welcomed me back and made sure that I was caught up on all the inside jokes I missed for those 4 months. In 8 short months, I'll get my diploma, if I get my PE credit figured out. And I will no longer get to watch the crowd fill, the stands fill with familiar faces, with teachers, old teachers, friends for my basketball game. I'll no longer get to hang out with my awesome teachers all day, which is honestly the reason I look forward to school every day. And I will no longer recognize everybody in the hallways and know way too much about everyone here. But I will always recognize the compassionate community, the responsibility, the excellence, the intellectual curiosity that Overlake has instilled in me and all of its students for the past 50 years. Thank you.
And my responsibility today is to talk a little bit about Overlake in the next 50 years. So I hope I'm successful with that. And I want to tell you that I didn't know anybody else's speech before I came up here, but what I'm going to say will resonate with many of the things that the previous speakers have talked about. So I guess we all really have, breathed in the air here, drank the water, whatever analogy you want to use to think about how this place is sort of entered into our very being. So, what we did for the first 50 years, is it right for the next 50? Imagine that it's 1967 and you're part of a small team starting the Overlake School. From the beginning, there was a commitment to each student, as captured in the school's first philosophy. The Overlake Country Day School, it used to be called the Overlake Country Day School, was founded on the belief that education must be adapted to the individual. Close personal relationships should provide each student the opportunity to discover his own unique talent and to develop it. Adapting to the individual also led to a belief that, quote, if a child were capable of moving ahead, the school should help him do so, unquote. It's intriguing to look at this philosophy now, given recent and growing interest in new forms of personalized learning, particularly those involved the use of data to understand better what students know and adaptive technology used to customize work presented to them. Central to personalizing now is the commitment to allowing students to move at a pace that makes sense for their understanding, rather than adhering to a calendar that often reflects rules for coverage. Personalizing learning and self-pacing were cornerstones of Overlake's original philosophy, where, in 1967, personalizing was possible because the school was tiny. 27 students in 7th and 8th grades. Everybody knew everyone. Of course, there was no awareness that one day we'd have a learning management system called Canvas, where we can pull data that indicate when students have been there and what they did while in the system. This was previously known as surveillance. Today it's called analytics. Overlake was also pioneering in carving out early on what they originally called the Special Language Disabilities Program, or SLD, aimed at integrating students with disabilities into the larger school program. While our understanding of, commitment to, and support for students with learning differences have evolved exponentially, it's noteworthy that Overlake was an early adopter of a program that's now part of every school. But let's return to 1967. Those of you who are alive, think back and consider the technology available then. Telephones with many wires that mostly were placed on desks or mounted on walls. Of course, walking across the room while talking required a very long cord. Mimeograph machines for copies, typewriters, chalkboards, pencils, although we still have pencils, slide rules, punch cards for computers, black and white tube TVs, slide carousels for photos, and 8mm film projectors. Let's also remember that in 1969 we sent the first man to the moon. Your smartphone, this thing that's in your pocket right now, has more computing power than the computers used 48 years ago to send Neil Armstrong to the moon. I'm sure you can detect where I'm heading with this. I don't need to list for you the technology we have now. Some of you probably helped create it. But the world has changed enormously since 1967, and the pace of change is ever faster. So how do schools respond to these changes? Yes, Overlake's early days were somewhat quiescent in terms of what's now getting attention. But truth be told, some of the ideas dated back further than 1967, when such critical educators as John Dewey and Maria Montessori advocated for them. But what will the next 50 years bring? Fortunately, Overlake's mission doesn't need reimagining. Its 5 tenets have a timelessness and an interpretive openness that will support new and modern ways to pursue them. The first one, inspire excellence. This is a central, timeless value, one that encourages us to try hard, to be willing to receive feedback and apply it, and to have high standards for ourselves in all areas. Yet the term excellence requires defining. And here we need to determine how excellence translates into the specifics of what we want students to know and be able to do at a high level now and in the future. Because we all have access to the information that in 1967 often came from curated collections in the library or a lecture carefully put together by a teacher. What we want students to know and to be able to do today now includes building the competencies that enable them to create and curate resources, to problem solve, to navigate, to evaluate, and make meaning with vast amounts of information and much more. The idea promoted by some that we don't need to know anything anymore, given our phone's power, is absurd. How can you possibly understand anything found on your phone without impressive literacy, and critical thinking skills. Those are the skills and the type of excellence we need more of in the next 50 years. Second one, develop intellectual curiosity. Again, we now have extraordinary access to information, to performances, to exhibits at museums, to ancient texts, and rare archaeological artifacts, and so much more accessible anytime, anywhere on your phone. But our ability to engage with any of these materials or experiences comes from genuine curiosity and a spirit of inquiry, an assertiveness that pushes us beyond the passive. It's easy now to binge watch, but we know from the extraordinary work of cognitive psychologists and neuroscientists that passive learning doesn't endure. To make meaning, we have to engage. We have to be actively and intellectually curious, and doing so requires the ability to ask excellent and intelligent questions, which is more crucial than being quick with answers. Having students develop these skills is an enormous priority for us now and in the future. Teach responsibility. Will the need for responsibility ever expire? Of course not. But we now have and will continue to have new ways in which students must learn and embrace responsibility. Within education, there are critical ways in which students can now take responsibility for their own learning. Doing so requires confidence, assertiveness, problem-solving skills, and more. The same qualities that are often highlighted as essential for modern workplaces. Further, there are myriad and fundamental ways in which responsibility is essential for the basic acts of being a citizen, which only increases our responsibility to ensure the students' wellness. Our world needs Overlake students to be engaged and active citizens, and I can only imagine those demands will increase, perhaps even exponentially. Embrace diversity. Embracing diversity is intimately tied to citizenship and responsibility. While it's hard to imagine there was ever a time when an interest in and an open-mindedness about others weren't valued and embraced, we all know well that there were such times. Overlake began in the civil rights era, although the original mission and the makeup of the first student body differed markedly from our current mission and our students. Our student body now reflects the enormous changes that have taken place in populations across the greater Seattle area, where people come from all over the world to work at such places as Microsoft and Amazon. Our global world and growing globalization will only continue, and it's clear that our students now and in the next 50 years will move several times for work and will work across time and space, working with people from a wide range of cultures who possess vastly different experiences from their own. Foster a compassionate community. With a commitment to each individual in place from the start, Overlake has always been dedicated to being a community where every person is known and cared for. Yet what's behind living that value, even on our worst days, are compassion and empathy, both of which are also critical for embracing diversity. Linking these two tenets makes a lot of sense. We aim to foster a compassionate community, one that is also wonderfully diverse. To embrace each other, differences, similarities, and all, we need empathy. The ability to imagine life from another's perspective. We need to stop and think what motivates others and leads them to act as they do. To attempt to comprehend how they think and what they value. Currently, we are increasing our social and emotional learning commitment, not only to respond to the immediate needs of our community, but also because these are life skills we all need for our increasingly global and complex world and to live healthy lives of integrity. Our students will be expected to show up at college and jobs with social and emotional skills, central among them the ability to empathize with others. Further, empathy may well be the competency that most determines how well we can collaborate and work effectively with others. Our commitment to helping students develop and practice empathy will continue to grow, although the nature and health of the relationships at Overlake indicate that empathy's active presence at our school. At the heart of what we do best at Overlake, and you've heard it over and over today, is the relational learning. Students here are known and cared for. They have a voice. Their questions are encouraged, respected, and responded to. They lead and they take the initiative to start new programs and advocate for themselves. They regard their teachers as mentors and partners, as trusted adults, coaches, advocates, and role models. These people support, nurture, and celebrate students' potential and possibilities while offering them the guidance and feedback that enable them to be reflective and to engage fully in the challenge and discomfort that authentic learning requires. While there are many changes that have taken place since Overlake's start that have radically shifted when, where, and how we can learn and who has access to information and resources, the research repeatedly suggests that relational learning is enduring and significant. In fact, these significant changes make our human relationships even more essential. So while we anticipate and plan for the future and ensure that an Overlake education remains relevant, at its heart will always be a relational learning. Thank you.